Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin. I'm joined as always by Scott, and this might just be the final War Within podcast because guess what? We've got early access to talk about next week. So
there is a great...
Is that even true? Is it going to be out by the time that we record? Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah.
Because it releases later this week. So
yeah. There's a very good chance that people listening to this right now will be listening to it while playing Midnight, which is pretty cool. It's here. It's here already. I'm excited.
But we do need to we need to dive in to Mythic Plus, Scott, because if there's something you and I enjoy in this game, it's Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about the retro for it yet.
That's true.
And we know how our retro episodes go.
Yeah.
So I think we should buy ourselves a little bit of time here and just get started.
All right. Here's my overall view. It's pretty good. All right. So moving on.
Just pretty good. Just pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right. So let's spend the rest of the episode talking about Fellowship. But no, real talk. Let's just break down season by season for Mythic Plus and kind of go from there.
Sure.
Now, I don't think it's a shock to anybody that I don't think either one of us thought very highly of season 1 this season.
No.
There was a very good dungeon pool, in my opinion. However, some of the changes made to said dungeons made it awful. Like, they brought back an amazing dungeon in Necrotic Wake and made it terrible.
Killed it. Massacred it.
So there's a lot going on here. It was another season with Miss Satirna Scythe, which I feel like that dungeon has been... I don't know if it's because I did it for 2 years and then it came back once already and now it's come back again.
Yeah.
But I'm like kind of over Mists. But yeah, season 1 was definitely the weakest season, in my opinion, at least from our group playing perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, you know, it's sometimes one of the costs of experimentation is you kind of chalk a whole season up to trying something new and it doesn't really work out. I mean, they tried to change a lot with this season. They completely changed affixes. They did the whole key level squish that technically happened at the end of Dragonflight, but this was the first proper season we got to see that in, and they changed kind of what levels you got which crests at, and they tried that out, and they added this new affix of losing the time limit. Remember when that was a +7 affix of where the time you lost 15 seconds on death instead of 5? That happened at a +7. You remember that?
The other part of this season I think a lot of people forgot was when we first started this season, it took an insane amount of crests to get crafted items.
Yeah, it was 90 crests. It was a full week's worth of crests. Yeah. So they did that. I can't even remember what level you started getting mythic crests on. I think it was like 8 or 9, or it was definitely higher than it is now.
I don't remember, honestly.
And so it was an experiment. They also, I think, just tuned the dungeons to be a little bit harder. Like, one of the things they did in season 2 and beyond is they lowered the percentage of like health and damage the mobs do. You know, I think it was like a flat 10% per key level, and they lowered that to only 7% in season 2, up until a key level of 10. So they were just trying some stuff. And yeah, the effect of it was, I think, for us, not as enjoyable. It was a struggle. I mean, again, and we mentioned this last week, I'll say it again. I was playing a spec in a role I had never played in the game with Mythic Plus. So I was trying to tank for the first time. And it turns out, unbeknownst to me, that this was one of the hardest seasons to tank in the history of Mythic Plus, because they put in all these big tank changes right before the War Within came out. And they didn't go over too great, actually. They made it really, really hard to be tank in this first season. I think one of the interesting things, Tevin, if you look at the numbers, though, still the most populous Mythic Plus season in the War Within was the first one. And that makes a certain level of a sense, right? There's always going to be the largest influx of players at the beginning of an expansion. But I do still find that interesting that like least popular season by far amongst everyone that played the game during the War Within, but most numbers, most amount of people playing it.
Yeah. So the fact that it's a new expansion, I think plays a part of it. I almost wonder if due to the changes that they made, people who don't normally stick around the game forever, like came back, experienced this, said no thanks, and then did not continue to play into season 2 and season 3 as well.
Very possible. Yeah.
That like could be just a double whammy on why this season was so popular.
Yeah.
That being said, though, there were good things about this season.
Sure.
Like there were a bunch of new things happened. It gave us the basis of the system that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't for the life of me. I was trying to find it on Wowhead while you were talking, but I haven't found it. Did Resilient Keys come in this season, or was that season 2?
Oh, good question. I feel like it was this season.
I can't for the life of me remember. But anyways, like that was foundational and a very good change in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can get into that a little bit later. I think all in all, it's a good change, but it does create some issues.
Actually, it looks like it was 11.1, so it was only season 2.
Season 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think that there were good changes here, and it gave us the basis for what we have now. And I think Scott and I both have been very adamant about saying, the current state of Mythic Plus is actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to really dog on this. I think that there was a plethora of things that went wrong that just kind of put a sour taste in our mouths for season 1. Like the tank changes were definitely questionable. I'm glad that they kind of stepped that back as we went later into the War Within. The fact that we were going in, it was season 1. We didn't have any base level of gear. That makes things harder at the beginning of a season. And then the dungeon rotation again had some good dungeons in it, but a lot of them were fairly difficult. I mean, we think back to season 1 and we have Necrotic Wake, which was relatively rough. We had, what was the fucking Kata dungeon?
Grimbatol.
I can't remember. Yeah, Grimbatol. That dungeon was rough.
Yeah, it was.
Siege of Borealis was
that dungeon sucked. I did not like
it. It's not Siege isn't necessarily a difficult dungeon, but there's a lot of just annoying boss mechanics. Like the second to last boss, if you have a tank that isn't used to tanking it, can just completely screw you.
Yeah.
If you have a group that isn't coordinated, they can drop shit where you need to stand. And then sometimes you just get screwed over on that boss and the final boss as well. And so I think that there was just a lot, it was a shitstorm all in all that just kind of caused it to feel weird. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think there was any one thing. And to be honest, I don't think any one thing was so egregious that I just want to say don't ever do this again. There's a very real possibility that if they brought back one of these dungeons that we're complaining about in a different season, it could be fine. Or if they made some of the changes that they made in a different season, it could be fine. But everything together was not great.
Yeah, and don't forget they changed how kicks and stops worked. This was the first season of that, but they hadn't kind of minimized the number of kicks that you needed, right? So it was just there was a lot of stuff that needed kicking and stopping, and yet if you overlapped, you were kind of screwed. It was just I think definitely the conversation of the War Within is Blizzard finally realizing that we don't like the extreme level of kicks and stops needed in Mythic Plus. We don't find that gameplay fun. And it seems from what I understand and from the little beta dungeons I've done is that Midnight, they've really gone hard on this philosophy where there is not too many things. I mean, there still are things that can be kicked and stopped, but there's not as many as there were before. And the way the bolters are designed in Midnight Season 1, you won't die. If you miss a kick, it'll hurt. It'll require you to respond and stuff like that, but you won't just pulls and high keys don't just result in either you get every kick or people are just going to die. And that's a good change.
Mhm.
But yeah, in season 1, they were making some moves in that direction, but they hadn't fully committed. And so, yeah, it felt really egregious and rough. It was just a hard season, like, especially once you got to 12s, right? That difficulty, that kind of threshold to move from 12s to 13s was very, very difficult for a lot of people, us included. That
I
wasn't
don't even think we talked about that. That was
Yeah.
another thing in season 1 that they had that they didn't have in seasons going forward. Like,
right.
there was that going to a 12, or was it going to a 13? Whatever it was, there was just this jump in
Yeah.
difficulty. Like, it just added just a flat additional percentage of damage and health
Yep.
to the mobs.
Yep.
And that went away after season 1.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, they were experimenting, and like, I think that's good, and I encourage that. I think it is rough when you do that in the first season of an expansion, right? I think you're absolutely right. You have a very high chance of scaring away people that were maybe dipping their toes into these systems for the first time. People that, especially in an expansion like the War Within, which added this whole new track of delves, and the point of delves in a lot of ways was to help the people that don't do these other things get gear, but also maybe give them that gear so they have the confidence of stepping toes into some of the other end game tracks. And I think Mythic Plus just scared those people away, because what happened in season 1, if you recall, is that the gear you got from delves was so good that the natural progression was to like do delves, and then immediately the gear that you get from Mythic Plus that was an upgrade from the gear you had in delves was at like a 6 or a 7. And so you had these people that were just doing delves, had never done Mythic Plus before, and it was like, well, okay, I'm going to do the one that gives me a gear upgrade. And it was just like a rude awakening, because it was like way too hard for them at that level. It was not the smooth transition between delves and M plus. And so, yeah, that was an oops that they had to correct, and that tainted the season a little bit as well. I agree with you. Not like the best dungeons in the world. Let's look at them. We haven't actually said them all. So the season 1 dungeons in the War Within, we had the 4 the War Within dungeons. Let's talk about those first. You had Arakara, the Stone Vault, Dawnbreaker, and City of Threats. So how you feeling about those words I just said, Devin?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I fucking hate all 4 of these things. Like, Dawnbreaker is the only one that's like, okay, but Dawnbreaker in season 1, like, it's such a love-hate relationship with that dungeon, because like, you go through it, it's fine, and then you get to the second to last boss, and then it just out of nowhere, people start getting one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And it took so long for people to realize, like, there is an extremely dangerous overlap during that boss.
Yeah.
Like, extremely dangerous. And in season 1, with the way people were tuned and the damage coming out of mobs and the difficulty increase per key level and just like everything compounding on top of each other, it felt like you would go into that dungeon sometimes and you would just die.
Mm-hmm.
But then other times you would go in and like you'd be fine. And so, yeah, I had a very love-hate relationship with Dawnbreaker in season 1. And I mean, it was fine when it came back in season 3. But yeah, I personally don't like any of these 4 dungeons.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The pain point in Dawnbreaker was, for me, some of the healing stuff, and that, like, it is just a perfect example of like how much stronger you get over the course of the expansion. That like that overlap in season 3, I would save like a big fat cooldown for every time. And at some point in the season, I realized, oh, I don't actually need this. This overlap isn't as bad. I'm just remembering the way it was in season 1. But it was tough. It was a tough dungeon. I think the routing for that dungeon was like, that's one of those ones that has a chance to be really fun and creative, because it's basically completely open and you can route any way you want. But I felt the result of that was a little weird instead of like fun and strategic, in my opinion. I don't like this is the second expansion in a row we had like one flying dungeon, right? We had Naku Defensive and Dragonflight, and we had this in Dawnbreaker. And like, from the aesthetic purposes of like mixing up dungeons, I really like it. But for a thing that you have to do 600 times over the course of a season, I found it kind of frustrating. I think I'm trying to think of what my favorite of these 4 would be though. I agree. I hated City of Threads. Like I just, and it's not even like everyone says you hate City of Threads because the little mini game you have to do. That's not actually why I hated City of Threads. I hated City of Threads because I didn't find any of the bosses fun. Any of them. They all annoyed me for different reasons. And that felt like a very long dungeon. I don't know if that's true, but it felt very long. I think, yeah. Okay. It's the second longest timer. The longest was Grim Batol. I have it open here.
Mm-hmm.
Arakara was the least offensive to me in season 1, even though as a tank, especially a bear tank, like dealing with the little suck-in thing was very annoying for me. That was the thing I struggled with the most in the first season, was positioning myself to where I could get to a thing on the ground in time so I don't get pulled in, but not go too early to where I'm now standing too close to I just hated it. I hated it. I had no fun there. But the rest of the dungeon was so easy that it felt like it made up for it, because you could like just tear through the dungeon and get to the final boss with like 10 minutes left. And even if you fucked up once or twice, you might still be able to time it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The reason I don't like Arakara is mainly just because it never felt like, to me, people necessarily understood the mechanics on the first boss. And it felt like in season 1 for sure. In season 3, it got a lot better and people started to learn. But in season 1, it felt like you're just running all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just constantly having to be moving. And then people finally got it down, like I said, in season 3, where it's like, okay, well, if we stand on the outside of the boss, we just let the things fixate us. It's easy to deal with once they get to the boss. And then the second boss in there had a learning curve to it too, if you played range, on like how you dodge the charge, because a lot of people would like stand away from him near a wall and then they'd end up getting double hit and just instant die.
Couldn't be me.
And then the third boss, like you said, is just like, depending on what class you play, that boss is like the easiest fucking thing in the world or extremely fucking annoying. And so I don't mind Arakara. I don't love it though. Like when it comes to War Within Dungeons, there are ones I like significantly more.
Yeah. How do you feel about the Stone Vault? I feel like so of these 4 we have here, 2 of them came back in season 3 and 2 of them didn't. I'm glad City of Threads didn't come back. I guess I'm glad Stone Vault didn't come back. This one bothered me less than the other ones. I really didn't like the Master Mechanics fight. That's Dorlita and Brock. I really did not like that fight.
Yeah, the problem I had with Stone Vault was less of the bosses and more
the trash
of the
did
trash.
suck. Yeah.
The trash in this dungeon was fucking horrendous. Either it was annoying dispels, it was annoying kicks that if you overlapped, then you were just fucked. There were some weird like skips that people would try to do. And then the like trash leading up to the final boss with the dudes who just charged everywhere. That was so fucking infuriating if you had somebody who like baited a charge in a terrible spot and then the mob's just gone for the next 45 seconds. Like the trash in this dungeon is what really killed it for me. Honestly, the bosses weren't too bad. I didn't like the duo boss. For the sole purpose, it felt like some of the mechanics were timed a little too tight. It didn't give you much of leeway to like make a mistake or even react to the mechanic that was coming out next.
Yes, definitely.
But outside of that, like that fight would have been fine, I think, if they made the timers a little bit more lenient, in my opinion.
Sure. This was season 1 and season 2 as well, was before they added the Waystones, which we'll get to those when we talk about season 3. But it made this a very frustrating dungeon to die on a boss, because it was this kind of wheel spoke model and spawned you at the very beginning of the dungeon every time you died. So like the run back, if you happen to wipe on a boss, was kind of like killer, to the point where you're just kind of fucked. Actually, if you wipe on a boss, you're probably not timing the dungeon. So that was a little frustrating.
Yeah. For the most part though, I think Stone Vault had a potential to be a good dungeon.
Yeah.
I really do think, in my opinion, for me, the trash is what did this one in.
Mm-hmm. So the 4 legacy dungeons, you already mentioned these, we'll say them again, were Mist of Tirna Scythe, the Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and Grim Batol. Which is your favorite out of those 4?
Oh, Mists. It's like not even close. It's Mists and then Siege. Honestly, Siege and Mists are fairly even for me. After, we kind of learned and we got our reps in, Siege of Borealis really became not a big deal. Necrotic Wake was a absolute pain in the fucking ass dungeon the entire season.
Yeah.
I was never happy to go into this key, which is hysterical because when we were in Shadowlands, I was like really happy to go into this key. So I was never happy to go into this keys in season 1 of The War Within. And the same goes with Grim Batol. Like everything in Grim Batol sucked. Like I just said, the trash in Stone Vault Blue, the trash, the bosses, like in my opinion, Grim Batol might single-handedly have been the worst dungeon of the season for me. If we're talking about like enjoying the beat to beat gameplay. I really did not like that place.
Yeah, so the thing with Grim Batol and me, like I love it aesthetically. I was so happy to see it come back. It's got a lot of nostalgic Cataclysm memories for me, and I really wanted to like the dungeon. And I think what the result of that for me is I'm really remembering it fondly when it was actually a miserable experience. Because I think I agree with you. Like it's just it was the type of dungeon where if you didn't have a curse to spell, it just fucking sucked. The pulls sucked. The bosses hit very hard and were difficult to deal with the exception of the dragon boss where as a tank you just got to post up in a corner and do nothing. That was, that was the easiest fight of the season. I really wanted to like it though, and I really liked it aesthetically. And like, you're always afraid. I'm for this journey they're taking with these old dungeons. I think the first time they said they were going to do this legacy dungeon thing, they were like, I don't think we can go back much earlier than I think it was Warlords Draenor at the time. I don't think we really go back much earlier than that. And they've slowly kind of gone back further and further and experimented to the point where it almost creates an entirely new dungeon. I mean, this upcoming season, we have the Pit of Sauron. That is the first Wrath of the Lich King dungeon. That's the furthest back they've ever gone. And from all my playing with it on the beta, I quite enjoyed it, and I'm hopeful for it. But so I don't want something to happen where like they've gone to the Cataclysm dungeon a few times now, right? We had Throne of Tides, we had Vortex Pinnacle, we had Grim Batol. Am I missing any? I feel like there was one more, but I can't right now.
Is there another one? I don't remember.
Maybe not.
I will say the Cataclysm dungeons are the ones that I feel like they fall flat the most on. Like, I don't necessarily think that Throne of the Tides was terrible. It was a hard dungeon, but I think what they did was fine. But I will say that, like, Vortex Pinnacle, Grim Batol, Throne of the Tides, I think they fell more flat on than a lot of the things that they've gone back to in the past. Like, I feel like there's some of the, like, Mist dungeons we've done, they've been hard, but they've been fine. I don't know.
I agree, but, like, that's what I'm worried about. Because like I want them to continue to experiment and do these things, right? And so I don't want them to get this idea of like, oh, we did this and we've done 3 Cataclysm dungeons now and all of them have not been very favorable. And I don't want them to be like, oh, I guess we're just going to give up on that, because I want them to still keep trying and keep cooking. And so like I think Grim Batol was actually very close, and I wonder what a Grim Batol under the new season 3 and beyond mindset would look like, because the problem is that was just a brutal selection of trash where the overlap between things being cast and things needing to be dealt with and stopped and all that was just brutal. And they've kind of pulled back on that now. And so I wonder like, oh, what would this dungeon look like if it was under that philosophy and not the one that it was designed going into it? So I'm actually very hopeful for Cataclysm dungeons. I really want to see like, maybe not Dead Mines, because that's such a long one. but like I really want to see like some of the other ones in here, you know?
If they did some of the end time dungeons, I think that they would turn out better.
Yeah.
I think that people have a very sour taste about the end time dungeons because they were around for so long.
Yeah.
And they got tired of doing them.
Sure.
But I do think that they would come back as Mythic Plus dungeons fairly well.
I also think the 5-man ZA and maybe even the ZG, those are possible good candidates for Mythic Plus. I think, we're probably going to have a troll patch. That's what everyone's saying, is season 2 is going to be a troll raid and a troll patch. And so we might see some recurring, they've got plenty of troll dungeons to pick from for their returning dungeons. So I'm interested to see if either of those make it. So I'm hopeful, but I agree with you. Grim Patrol, I wanted to like it more than I did.
So let me ask you this. I was thinking about it while you were talking. I do think that Grim Patrol suffered from a visibility issue as well.
True.
There was not a ton of like easily understandable visuals. Specifically when we talk about like the last boss. The last boss was hard to tell where you were supposed to stand. And it was kind of hard to navigate through.
As a tank, the fact that you had to start moving to where the eye of the storm was going to be almost immediately. But yeah, in the moment, it was very difficult to actually like quickly tell and go. Like I struggled with that early in the season a lot until I like finally got used to it. That was tough. I agree. The visuals there were not great.
Do you think that makes it? Do you think if the visuals were fixed, that would have been redeeming enough for this dungeon? Or do you think it was still just like kind of a shit show even with that?
I think maybe a little bit. I mean, yeah, this is a good point. We haven't gotten into season 2 yet, but another big change in season 2 is this new swirly introduced and kind of a new recommitment to visuals and displays and things. And again, so yeah, like with the new commitment to how many spells you're going to have to deal with in a dungeon and these new visuals, it's another one of those things where like, maybe Grim Patrol was just like one expansion too early. and I don't know, we'll see. Maybe it'll come back years from now and with all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I do think with that visual stuff fixed a little bit, maybe it would be a little bit better. Because that the other thing with that final boss is that like with all the shit going around, it is very easy to accidentally walk into one of those fucking tentacles, and the tentacles are just everywhere. And some visual clarity would have been good there too. And they match the color of the ground, and it's just tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And like show you the radius of them and things like that. Yeah. I think that there were a lot of dungeons in this season that would have benefited from that. Like Siege is another one. The second to last boss could have had some additional visual clarity on like which way the waves were coming from or something like that. Because if you look and you take any amount of time more than like a few seconds to assess where the first wave is coming from, it's potentially too late depending on where you're standing.
Yep.
And so I do think that some of the visual clarity changes that they did in season 2 and beyond might have actually made a lot of these dungeons feel better than they did.
Yeah, I think you're right. I hope so. I will say, I know you said Mist of Tina Scythe was your favorite. I hate that dungeon. I hate that dungeon for almost one reason only. As a tank, the Mistcaller Guardians and their stupid anima slash that they added to them. This absolutely brutal, powerful tank buster with a massive dot on the end of it. And there were pulls. Like, I just remember, like, the biggest problem was that it was random which way through the mist you were going to get. And so you couldn't necessarily plan which pack is going to be the one with 2 guardians in it. And so you had to, like, I just remember having to, like, hold my big cooldowns, because if I didn't have my big defensives and big cooldowns for the double guardian pack, I was fucked. I was going to die no matter what. And because I couldn't plan that ahead, I was just like sitting on them. And there were times where I got close to dying or fucked up because I was sitting on cooldowns, afraid to press them because I didn't know if we were going to walk through a portal and the next one was going to be 2 guardians. And I'd be like, fuck. So I hated that. I mean, it's interesting. They took that dungeon and that was a new ability they added to it. They made those guys beefy and strong in a way that they were not in Shadowlands. And I think that's also something that happens a lot in a lot of these dungeons that came back is like, I mean, Necrotic Wake, like they made some of these guys like brutal to the, okay, let's just reiterate. Tanking sucked in the first season. It really sucked. They made some of these trash mobs absolutely brutal. And that's the way I felt about Necrotic Wake as well. There were some pulls in there where I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. If I do not play global perfect, I'm just going to die.
Yeah, I have a lot of understanding of Mists, and maybe that's why I think of it more favorably to the other three. Because like Mists was not a dungeon where they made such fundamental changes that like shook things up like they did for Necrotic Wake, in my opinion. Sure. I could go back into Mists and I could, for the most part, be fine. Like, yeah, there were some changes to the ads, like you were just talking about. That sucks for tanks and for healers specifically. The other changes that they made were I can't for the life of me think of what they're called, but they were the like defender ads or something like that. That you would fight two of them right at the beginning of the maze, and they added like a charge to them.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like a forced movement thing too. If you got hit by it, it'd bump you, and then that means like your casts get canceled, and a bunch of other shit can go wrong. So like, yeah, that was shitty as well. And then another thing that like you don't really see unless it's in higher level play or if you have somebody who understands, but like there's still a Warlock Gate skip there that was weird at the very beginning. And that's not very easy to tell new players about. And additionally, if you have a pet class, being able to like pull things through the miss walls was another thing to like that just isn't very well explained. So I don't know. I think that I have a more fun experience of Mists just because I am used to doing the dungeon. I don't necessarily think it was the best of the 4 returning dungeons.
It was definitely the one I was least excited to come back. I was like, oh, okay, sure. There's just nothing that got me really excited about it. And then I think my experience with it was just more negative. And then I think, I think sometimes it's hard to really divide. Is it that I didn't like the dungeons, or is it that I didn't like the design of the game at the time? And I'm just conflating those two things together, because when I look at these dungeons, I'm like, yeah, I like, especially compared to the other 2 seasons in the expansion, like I just like, this is not a great, like, get out of bed in the morning charged to come play set of dungeons.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I there's a lot that went wrong in season 1. Yeah. And so it's really hard for me to just sit here and be exactly what you said. It's hard to be positive about any of these because at the end of the day, I don't have fond memories of any of these dungeons. And so I don't want to see them again. I don't want them to come back.
And I think the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on to season 2 and greener pastures. The last part of it was, I mean, we did the whole episode on this, was like the Crest Mountain catch up that was required if you wanted to play an alt, right? The number of crests you needed to grind to catch up on an alt was insane. And it wasn't until the very end of the season that they kind of redid the crest earning system to where it is now, where at a plus 12, you get 20 instead of just the 12 that you used to get. And so to kind of incentivize you to push up into the higher key levels to get more crests. It wasn't until the very end of the season that they did that. But I mean, remember those conversations where we were like calculating like how many dungeons you'd have to run if you wanted to play an alt, and like the lift of that was just insane. And so
the crafting item change, I think almost single-handedly like made that feel infinitely better.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like you said, they made changes to where you got more crests for doing higher level keys, which wasn't the case before. The amount of crests needed almost never impacts you when you're playing your main, but just destroys you when you decide to start leveling ults.
Yeah. And I am a bit concerned about this going into midnight. Speaking of the crafted things, one of the things that was announced in between last week's episode and this week's episode is that they undid their increasing costs for leveling up gear. It used to be it started at 10 and then climbed up to 50 crests to increase to the next level. They got rid of that. They went back to a flat rate for increasing gear. That flat rate is higher, though. In the War Within, it was 15 crests per level. It is now 20 crests per level. The other thing is crafted gear is back up to 80. It's not the 90 that it was in season 1 of the War Within, but it is 80 crests to max out a crafted piece. That kind of makes sense because it's basically an increase of 5 per level. That was the increase of how much crests it costs to upgrade things, essentially, right? Like that, those numbers check out, but it is pushing up again close to that's not all of your cap, because the big thing was when it was 90 in season 1 of the War Within, that was your entire crest budget for the week was spent on that one piece. That will not be the case in Midnight. It will be 80 of your 100. So you will still technically have one other upgrade you can do that week if you're making a crafted piece, which is appreciated. But I do worry about these increased crest costs across the board. If this is again going to feel like, okay, when you're playing your main and maxing out dungeons every week, but like when you decide to hop on your alt or even your third alt or fourth alt, is that going to feel pretty insurmountable even with the increased number of crests that you get for doing 12s? I don't know. I think we'll see. I think we have to get in and experience that before we can conclude. But I am a bit concerned about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Scott, one thing we didn't talk about in season 1 that I think is worth mentioning, since we didn't talk about it last week, is the borrowed power system in season 1. I think was the most annoying of the 3 to really interface with.
The worst of the 3.
And I think that this was solely because of the way in which you could like kind of get stuck and not know where to go. Yeah. Like there's a point in which you had to like go get a quest, but you had to have entered in the like bonus objective thing for the zone before you could get the quest, and then you had to go back into that bonus objective area, but there was no indication that you needed to do that, and nobody realized when it was first released, because like obviously you're doing it week by week, and so you've done this already, and so your account's already flagged and you're fine, but when you go back to do it on a month in, like everything's unlocked, you can just power through, blast through all the quests, get everything, then you run into this issue. And I cannot tell you how many people in our guild I had to like explicitly tell them, like they were like, hey, I'm at X level out of whatever on the amulet and I cannot find the next quest. And like I had to go over with them how to do this because I found myself in the same spot and had to figure it out. I feel like I don't even remember if that's the Circe Circlet.
It's a Circe Circlet, yeah.
Anyways, I feel like this was the weakest of the borrowed powers in terms of like gameplay and how you acquired it and everything.
100%. And I wasn't a huge fan of the amulet either, but I think acquiring the stones to put in it and acquiring the thing to level it up each week was across the board the worst experience that I had in this expansion by far. It was just not fun. It was not fun. It was confusing. And I remember like the first week it came out, some of the bosses in the stupid Siren Isle zone were bugged and were just not dropping the right stones. And like, you just didn't know it. And so like, I just kept killing them being like, oh, I'm getting really unlucky here. I just like, it was just a terrible experience across the board. It was a terrible experience the first time around. It was a terrible experience on alts. It was a terrible experience. And I thought I hated it. I hated it.
This was one thing too, that they didn't tell people how it was going to interact and how you were going to obtain all your stones until it came out either.
Yeah.
And then when it released, people are like, oh, well, I need to do this thing for my stones, but it's not available this week. And so people were starting to find out, well, now I've got to wait 2-3 weeks to be able to get my best in slot stone. And they were not happy.
And they panicked and changed that.
Yeah, almost immediately, like days after it was released. And I do think that this, again, this is just another like season 1 thing, I think. Like outside of the raid in season 1, I think that they were fumbling a little bit. Yeah. Like they were making a ton of changes, throwing everything at the wall, seeing what stuck. And they did get a few good things out of it, but it definitely was the sloppiest of the seasons for The War Within, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that they learned from it and made corrections going forward. But yeah, I just like, we said it before, I'll say it again. These kind of middle of the road, half-assed borrowed power light systems, I just don't ever think they're good. And I think you either need to just fully commit to borrowed power being a thing that's going to like be the defining thing of an expansion or a patch, and make it this thing that's going to take time and effort to work on over time, or don't do it at all. And I just think these like middle of the road versions of them, I just don't think they've ever been fun. And this is the least fun of them for sure.
Well, let's segue this into season 2, because season 2 had what you and I probably complained about the most as far as one of the borrowed power systems, and that was the delve belt.
Mm-hmm.
That was just because we were forced to do delves, and you and I didn't really want to do delves, because in season 2 they made a change to where delves didn't give you as good a gear as they did in season 1. Still decent, honestly. Like for what you were doing, you were still rewarded fairly handsomely. But they took away the ability to do like the boss encounter as one of the like highest level delves, and they lowered the gear that you could get out of doing delves and things like that. So there were a lot of changes that went in, which essentially made it to where Scott and I didn't want to do delves in season 1, but we did it because we could get decent gear. And in season 2, we didn't really have any incentive because we had decent gear from season 1. And the season 2 delves was like getting you slightly better than if you had like maxed out gear in season 1. Again, it was decent, but there wasn't the incentive that we had in season 1 to do it. And so like forcing us into that, especially halfway through the season, was not very fun.
Yeah. The only saving grace of this was that to do the stuff you needed to do to upgrade the belt, you could do that on a level 1 delve and literally just like sprint through it as quickly as possible. And then you're done. So less annoying, but still not fun. Yeah.
And you were kind of beholden to like, I don't know. I feel like Scott said it best 2 seconds ago when he said these borrowed power light systems like kind of just need to go at this point, I think. So dungeon wise though, Scott, this season was kind of a fucking banger. I don't know about you, but I actually really liked the dungeons this season. I went into the season and into the expansion knowing wholeheartedly that Dark Flame Clef was going to be a dungeon that was going to be in Mythic Plus. And I was terrified. And honestly, after experiencing it and kind of like learning how you did most of the mechanics in the dungeon and learning how to deal with a lot of the boss's annoying things in a way that made them not so annoying, this dungeon really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Same thing with Priory. I thought Priory was going to be an absolute shit show, which it's a hard dungeon. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, this season I think had a lot of good dungeons in it.
So yeah, it's the War Within Dungeons, Cinderreed Meadery, Darkflame Cleft, the Rookery, and Priory. Our previous legacy dungeons were the Motherlode, Theater of Pain, and Mechagon Workshop. And then, for the first time ever, they said, oh, also, there's just going to be a brand new dungeon, and it's Operation Floodgate, which was awesome. So yeah, I mean, like dungeon pool wise, I agree with you. I liked just about every single one of these. I really like Dark Flame Cleft. I was not worried about it like you were worried about it. I like these different kind of mini game things in dungeons that aren't just pulling mobs and killing them, because I think they keep dungeons fresh and interesting, and so I will always encourage them, and I like them. And the only hope is that they figure out how to do it in a timer situation that's not too bad. But I thought they handled it pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I like just about every single one of these dungeons. I think when we talk about the previous, I think this is the season that had the weakest previous expansion dungeons. Maybe not from like a design or difficulty standpoint, but just like my interest level in them. Because Mechagon Workshop was one that we already had when the Shadowlands faded. That got brought back already, so we had done that relatively recently. And then Theater Pain, It's just never been a fun dungeon ever. And so I was not excited about that. I think Mechagon was okay. It was the longest dungeon in the pool by far. It was like 39 minutes was the timer on that dungeon. And so that hurts it a little bit. Like
You're talking about Motherlode?
Yeah, Motherlode. Sorry, yeah, Motherlode.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, other than those, like, yeah, everything else is kind of great.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this as somebody who didn't experience all of these dungeons at content.
Mm-hmm.
Well, besides the current dungeons, what was your least favorite dungeon this season?
Theater of Pain.
I think my least favorite dungeon this season was hands down Motherlode. And that was just because I did not like it at content. I didn't like the routing you had to do. The skips were annoying. When you get them down and you know like exactly where to jump for jumping over the wall and how to time running in between the mobs, like they're not bad. They're just annoying skips. And then all of that on top of you just can't play a fucking caster in this dungeon unless you have a coordinated group.
Yeah.
Is miserable. Like it's not fun. So Motherlode was by far my least favorite. That being said though, I actually had a better time in Motherlode this time around than I did the previous time that we had Motherlode at content. So that's why I said like this season kind of had a lot of good dungeons for me because I liked all of them going into it. Again, some of them are hard, and I think that this season was probably the biggest gap in between key level completion per dungeon we had, because I think the Rookery was just so insanely easy comparatively to any of the other dungeons. Yeah. So like there was some balancing issues, and there were issues in season 2, but when I compared this list of dungeons in my like fondness and memories of season 2 to like season 1, like it is absolutely night and day difference. And like I can't look at any of the dungeons in season 2 and be like, I would have rather done a season 1 dungeon over these. So complete upgrade in my opinion, from mechanics, from dungeon pool, from almost everything.
Yeah, I mean even the hard ones, right? Like Priory was a difficult dungeon, but I liked it. Cinderbrew Meadery could be a very hard dungeon. They had some very difficult trash in there, but I liked that dungeon. I thought it was fun. So yeah, I mean, I just liked all of these. I mean, and part of this is I was back on my healer, and this was the season I attempted to do my Heal Team 6 challenge. Didn't quite get there for reasons of just like time that I ended up quitting for a month and a half at the beginning of the season, and so I was behind on all of it. But what it means is that in my quest to try to do it, like I played these dungeons a lot. And the fact that I still have such fond memories of them, I think is very telling that like Darkflame Cleft really had fun in that one. Meadery had fun in it. Floodgate, love that dungeon. That one came back in season 3 and I still like it. I'm still not sick of it. So I think just great dungeons all around. I think you felt the slight ease of difficulty of the scaling, which I think helped make it a little bit more enjoyable as well. But yeah, just very fun dungeons, very fun boss encounters. Like Darkflame Cleft, I know like the heavy healing boss. Some people didn't like that one, but I like the challenge of that. It was very stressful in a fun way. Same with Floodgate and the Swamp Fang boss. Like that was a stressful healing challenge. That it was one of those things where it's fun to see the way all the different healers, what the parts of that they struggle on and the parts that some of them didn't. I thought that was cool. So yeah, really good season. What are some of the other things this season brought for us?
Well, this season brought Turbo Boost.
Yeah.
This season brought Resilient Keystones, which we were going to kind of touch on in season 1, but we have to talk about Resilient Keystones just as what they were intended for, and then we have to talk about the consequence of that. Because the intention here was to make it so that people have to do less homework keys. Mm-hmm. Like, you get to a point in which you get a keystone that will not fall below a certain level, And that way, if you fail a dungeon, you're only going down to the level at which you know your keystone cannot go lower than, and you can just keep running that over and over and over again until you go back up to the level that you need. So the intention here is phenomenal, in my opinion. It's a very thoughtful way to somewhat combat this issue of homework keys for the level at which people are doing keys just for fun and not for rewards. The problem with that is this system can be extremely abused by the best of the best players. And this caused us to see the biggest gap we've ever seen at the top end of Mythic Plus.
Sure.
Is that an issue? Probably not for the majority of players, but it is a consequence of this, and it is why it is so hard to like create a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, I mean, look, call me an asshole, but like I don't give a shit. Like I like the content creators that I watch that are on the top end. I love those guys. I think they're great players and creators, and I respect the hell out of them. I do. But like whenever I hear them start to bitch about resilient keys, I'm just like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's like listening to a billionaire like complain about how the people are mean to them because they're billionaires. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think it's a good system that is doing exactly what it needs to be doing at the levels it was intended to do it at. And if it has an adverse effect for 0.05% of the population, bummer. Sorry guys. Enjoy doing 720s to get your resilient 20s. Sorry.
The other thing too that I think was interesting with resilient keystones was it was finally something to strive for once you got past the level of like once you got into 12s and 13s and 14s and 15s, like you always had this little goal. You always had a goal of like, well, if I get all 14s done, then I have resilient 14s. And if I get all 15s done, I have resilient 15s. And so
Yeah.
I think it was a very good, not only in helping curb the like homework key issue, but like people who lose motivation because they don't have a reason to continue outside of like just wanting to, it gave them the ability to have these like little minor goals that they can constantly work forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was also the season that introduced the Keystone Legend achievement, right? That gave
True.
you an achievement at 3K. So I think both of those things combined ended up giving people just slightly more steps on the ladder to climb. Because, yeah, I mean, like we talked about this before, one of the biggest problems is you have Keystone Master, you have Keystone Hero, and then you have your portals. And if you're not going to make it in the top 0.1%, which 99.9% of people are not, then there's just nothing for you unless you set your own personal goals. And like, I think it's okay to set your own personal goals. I think you and I have done that at various points during it, but like, I think it just seems like the perfect system to build carrots into along the way. And I think resilient keystones are a great way of doing that. As you said, that mount, even if it is just a recolor at 3K, is a great way of doing that. And I still think they could add a few more rungs on that ladder to give people something to strive for that is not just title. So I encourage Blizzard, because I know they're listening, to continue to strive for that kind of stuff and make those changes.
Yeah. So as far as other game-changing things that happened in Season 2, Scott, for Mythic Plus, I don't think that there was much. I mean, it was a lot of like lessening the harshness of Season 1, you know, lessening the kicks, lessening the issue with tanks, lessening the strenuous healing checks and everything that were in the game. Like
they moved around the affixes too, right? This was where they took the plus 15 seconds on death and moved that to plus 12 instead of 7. And so I think this is when it got moved to what it is currently, which is, well, no, because they changed it again for midnight. But this is when it got moved to a 4 is when you have the bargain affix. A 7 is when you have either tyrannical or fortified. A 10 is when you get the other tyrannical or fortified. And a 12 is when you get the harsher death penalty and the Zalatath's bargain affix goes away. So this was the season that they changed to that. And I just think that's like, that change is kind of just a win across the board. I have very little negative to say about that, except if you want to get me on a certain day where I could start saying that maybe weekly rotating affixes were good for this season, and maybe it's time we consider bringing those back in some form or fashion.
Shh. Don't say that, Scott. Don't say that.
I don't know,
You're
man.
gonna anger everybody.
Maybe, I mean, we could probably have a whole episode about this one day, but
we could definitely, because you and I disagree on this.
The more I think about it, and to be clear here, I'm not saying I want like Explosive and Grievous and this shit back. I'm just saying that I think there is value to having something that segments and divides the week to week grind of Mythic Plus. I think could be a good thing.
Well, that being said, Scott, we did not have that in season 2.
No.
And was it? I want to ask specifically what you think the difficulty change was in season 2 that mattered the most, because they made a few. And in my opinion, I think that removing the flat increase once you hit level 12 keys was like far and away the single-handed like biggest difficulty change that they made. And like it made keys feel like that natural increasing progression again, instead of like you go and you hit 12s and you're like, what the actual fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And you finally get over that and it's like, okay, well now we're just increasing like normal again. So I think that's single-handedly the best change that was made this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one that affected the most people was the Keystone scaling change, to switch it from a 10% scaling increase to a 7% scaling increase. I think that's the thing the majority of players experienced. I think basically what they decided was maybe it should be fairly easy to get to 10s. Is kind of what they decided. And that's not something they had in their mind in the first season. And I think
it 10 where that was added in season 1?
No, it was in season 1, the Zalatath's whatever affix was above 12 is when the scaling went.
Okay. Above 12.
But just the general, I mean, they removed that, but also they just lessened the amount of scaling between 1 and 10s. So it's not until an 11 that it starts scaling by 10% per key level. It was just 7 up until that. So they just made it easier to get to plus 10. Like they just across the board made it easier to get to plus 10. And I think ultimately that was a good call. I think we're going to get back to a place again where we're going to slowly inflate key level again. We did this squish down from 20s to 10s, and it seems to be pulling back up again a little bit. I'm interested to see what like the top end key for Midnight Season 1 is going to be. Maybe it won't be much higher.
I'm going to be honest with you.
21.
The inflation of numbers in WoW, like Blizzard just seems to not fucking care. So like I'm kind of inclined to just not care if we start doing 20, 25 up to 30 keys at this point, because like they've already thrown to the fucking wind item level inflation. Like it is so bad and so much worse than it has ever been now, especially with Turbo Boost, which is another thing we heard is probably maybe potentially coming back in season 1 of Midnight, which we'll see.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what that is. There was a data mined tag that was like mid-season like void catalyst or whatever that's going to be something that might do something. We have no idea what it is.
But if that comes back, it just like item level inflation is through the roof, stat inflation's through the roof. So like, should we even care about key level inflation and the fact that they might squish it every few expansions?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they have a formula for stat squish now, so they don't care anymore. Like they know what to do and they just like hit button and it squishes, and they've like figured that out. So it's easy for them to do, so they don't care. I think the thing with key level inflation is it does adjust like how far and how long it takes to make the journey, right? So like if keys inflate, but like still top out at the same place, right? Like, so if this expansion people are timing up to like 28s, but the gear rewards still top out at 12, then essentially it has no effect on progression in any real way. It just has an effect on people pushing for like cosmetics and score and things like that, which I'm fine with. But like if Keystone creep, if Keystone inflation also eventually pulls where the system tops out and to further and further, that's when I think it does become a concern.
Sure.
Because that's just more work that people have to do to top out in where they want to be in the system. Not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, we had things top out at 20 for a long time. We were fine with it. So like that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but it's just something to consider for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, other than that, Scott, I don't think there were any specifics in season 2 to call out. I mean, we talked about the Delve Belt. We talked about a lot of the good changes that were made. Turbo Boost happened. We covered that last week, so we're not going to go into detail on that. And then Resilient Keystones were added. I don't think that there were any, I guess the crest changes we talked about came in. Like there were a lot of small changes that added up to be a bunch of good things. And I don't think that there's any other like major things we need to call out from season 2, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So that brings us into season 3, which is the most recent season, the season we're fresh off the presses of. And we need to, I think we need to have a real conversation about season 3 because like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about season 3 and I don't have a lot of bad things to think about for season 3, but
and yet
it was the season I played the least.
Yeah.
So is that inevitable? Like, is that just always going to happen with every expansion World of Warcraft ever releases? We are going to get to a point where we're like halfway through season 3. We know the new expansion's coming out. We know that there's going to be a bunch of changes that are coming out soon. We've been playing the same game for a year and a half. Like, is this just inevitable? Or is there a reason that people started to peter out faster in season 3 because of the changes that were made in season 3?
Yeah, it's no affixes, man. They just lose drive because they don't have any affixes. No, I mean, I think the interesting thing about season 3 is it's always like the capstone of the expansion. And yet, from a Mythic Plus perspective, in this new dungeon, legacy dungeon paradigm we've established, season 3 is always going to be the one where we're out of new dungeons to do. So it's always going to be a recycling of all dungeons. And they tried to combat that a little in season 3 by once again introducing a new dungeon. And it was a great dungeon. I enjoyed Echo Dome Eldani. I thought it was pretty good. But essentially, outside of that, all of these dungeons were dungeons we played in previous Mythic Plus seasons before. And I think that hurts it a little bit. And some of them were dungeons I really liked, like Floodgate. We just talked about Floodgate. It was good. I liked it. Streets and Gambit. I enjoyed those dungeons. But like the Return of Dawnbreaker, okay? The Return of Priory, okay? The Return of Arakara, except we made it worse, okay? Halls of Atonement, we made that one worse. It eventually got better, but it started out worse. Like, it just is going to be the season of reruns, essentially. And I think that always just does hurt it a little bit. I think it does.
Mm-hmm. I also think that there's something to be said about late expansion, like stat inflation too.
Sure.
Which I think plays a very big part in a lot of things going into late expansion stuff. Because eventually you get to a point, because the way that stats work in WoW, if anybody doesn't know this, like the number at which you have only matters within that expansion. And so if you go from, and we're going to get a stat squish, so it's not going to matter. But let's say you go from the War Within and you have 5k haste. At the end of the War Within, you have 5k haste and you're casting spells. You're just throwing them out. And you go into Midnight and you get 5,500 haste. But you have less haste than you did in season 3 of the War Within because 5,500 is a smaller percentage of what they want the cap to be in Midnight.
Sure.
And so you have this issue in which you get so strong at the end of an expansion that you kind of ignore a lot of things and you can just cast your abilities as much as you want, and you have extremely high versatility and stuff like that. And then you get all of that ripped away, even if it doesn't like numerically look like you did going into a new expansion, to where you feel weak again. And this has forever been the issue, and forever been a case in which has happened. So it's not that big of a deal, but I think that makes the final season easier to approach, easier to top out at, and easier to get into from a perspective at which I don't know is beneficial to the season, because it allows you to carry over your season 2 gear so much easier into season 3 and get into 10s and really start to like max out what you're going to do in Mythic Plus faster than you can do any other time in the expansion.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I was listening to you go through that list, and I was like, everything you're describing seems like it would make the season incredibly popular. But I think to your point, it just means you cap out faster. Like we were doing 10s like within a day of the season coming out. Like we just basically went right into them. And I think 12s is like maybe the week after that. And so that does feel a little weird when you're just like done with the gear progression. I mean, not done with the gear progression portion of it, but you're done with like grinding the keystones up, and then from there it's just pushing up for fun, essentially. That happened very, very fast in the season. I think you're right.
Yeah.
It is interesting that it's like you're right. When you look at the season, though, it's like filled with wins. You know, you got the Waystone introduced. That we've been begging for that. That was incredible. It's awesome. You got the lever system. Okay, that's more of a mixed bag, but they're trying to combat a problem, right? I think it's kind of, you know, it's like I think I made this comparison when we were talking about it, but it's like democracy is not the best form of government, but it's the best form of government we've been able to come up with. So like I think this lever system is perhaps possibly like the best solution that has been created so far. And I mean, it needs to continue to be tinkered with, and hopefully it'll get better. But it's just, you had a bunch of good stuff, and yet I agree with you. I really thought I was going to push a lot this season, because like season 2 was not only did I take a break at the beginning of the season, but also like I set out specifically to be broad, not deep. So I was like, I'm going to get all these healers to 3K, which is naturally going to decrease the amount of time I have to get one healer above 3K. And so I didn't push very hard that season. And so I was like, season 3, I'm going to push. I didn't, right? I think it's not the lowest season score I've gotten, but it's not close to the highest. And I just, that really surprised me, and I can't even quite put a finger on why, other than it seemed like I just stopped playing pretty early in the season.
Yeah. I think, I really do think that it's because you top out so quickly. Like, the more and more I think about it, I don't have any reason to say that I stopped playing the game other than that. Like, I got to a point at which I wasn't going to be able to achieve anything further. I had been playing and pushing and grinding the last year and a half, and maybe I just needed a break. And maybe that's just the downfall of seasonal games. And we've seen, like, we're going to talk about Fellowship in a little bit, and I know some people get a little uppity when we do talk about it, but look at Fellowship. That game 2 weeks ago had like 200 concurrent players. And now it releases its new season, and there are thousands of people playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to a point with seasonal games where you realize it might be more worth your time or more fun for you to go do something else and come back to it when there's new stuff. And I think that this gets compounded in season 3 by the fact that it's not just a new season you're waiting on. It's not just a new thing that's going to be coming, a new raid, whatever. It is a whole new expansion that has its own box features, has its own classes, has its own races, has housing this time around. And that just makes it even more so like maybe I'll just wait for the new thing to come out and we'll see how it goes there.
Yeah.
And then you pair that with the fact that you top out so fast. The more I say this, I'm just convincing myself. I think it's inevitable that season 3 is always going to feel this way. And I don't know how they combat that.
Yeah, I mean, the counterpoint, though, is in Dragonflight, season 3 is the one we pushed the hardest in.
That's true.
So,
but we also had a Fated season to look forward to.
Fair. So it wasn't truly the final season of the expansion. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing because, like, this game has been becoming more and more seasonal as it's been going on. They've only increased the amount of things that are part of the seasonal rotation, right? It's not just Mythic Plus and Raid anymore. Now it's also Heroic Dungeons. Now it's also Delves. Now it's also this hunt is going to be a seasonal thing. So it's world content has seasons. Dungeons have seasons. Raids have seasons. Everything now has a season. And the result of which, especially when we're talking about something like Mythic Plus, is that when the game has become so seasonal, it almost destroys the idea of an expansion at all. Because, like, if all you are interested in is Mythic Plus, what does an expansion really do to you besides give you this long list of stuff you have to do to get ready for the next season of Mythic Plus? And it creates this weird thing where, like, obviously, like, expansions still have benefits. And I'm not saying it's like new place to explore, new quests, new levels. Like for the MMORPG player that plays World of Warcraft holistically, a new expansion is a big deal. But if you were just interested in Mythic Plus, at the end of the day, a new expansion is just a new season. That's really all it is. A new season with some new dungeons.
And you have to wait 2 months for.
Right. And so I just wonder, like, what the effect of that has on a person when they're looking, because, like, I think it's true that, like, there's one part of me that's like, how could you skip the season that's the final season of the expansion because it's the culmination of the expansion? How could you skip that? Because I think in any seasonal game, I think it is a completely logical and normal thing for a person to just say, this season I just don't feel like playing. I'm just going to sit this one out. People do that all the time. And people do that in this game all the time. But there's one side of me that says that's fine. And there's another side of me that says, but it's the penultimate season of the expansion. What do you mean? You can't, or not the penultimate. It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate season of the expansion. You can't do that. You can't do that. How can you skip the last one of the expansion? And it's like, well, to a seasonal player who is just doing Mythic Plus, none of that matters, really. And so it is this kind of push and pull of these almost like opposing ideas of, like, an expansion and a season. And we've kind of tried to push these things together, and that works in some ways and it doesn't work in other ways. And I think maybe part of what we're seeing here ultimately is the way in which those ideas do not mesh together. Because you're absolutely right that on paper, this season was awesome. It did so many things we've been asking for. The dungeon pool was interesting. There's no dungeon here I, like, absolutely hated. I mean, I was not happy with what they did to Arakara, but, like, that small thing in the end of one dungeon not being my favorite, that usually always happens. But yeah, I mean, like, my drive and my excitement and all that stuff was just not there. So why?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to ask, because I think that it's even harder for you and I looking back in season 3 of Dragonflight and wondering why we didn't beat her out. Like I said, we had Fated to look forward to, sure. But we also were playing with a full group in season 3.
Yeah.
And so, like, if we had a full group in season 3 of The War Within, would we have carried out a lot longer?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is yes.
It is, but I think there's a reason why we didn't have a full group in season 3, and it's that the people that we play with were experiencing the same thing that we were experiencing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know how to say this other than season 3 was amazing. A lot of the changes that they made are, I think, going to be very fundamental to Mythic Plus and the design philosophy for Mythic Plus going forward. And I do think that is amazing. Like, I don't want them to take the player count of season 3 and be like, man, we made a mistake here, because they didn't. Like they did things by all intents and purposes
Mhm.
correctly. And so I want them to continue to understand that. But yeah, it's really hard to like show that when people are kind of petering out. I do want to ask you, Scott. I don't know if you remember or not, and I need to probably just Google it. When was the ping system introduced? Because we didn't really talk about that either.
I believe that was in Dragonflight.
Was it at the end of Dragonflight? I was trying to remember if it was end of Dragonflight or if it was beginning of War Within.
I'm 90% sure it was in season 3 of Dragonflight.
Okay.
Patch
That's
10,
another like
10.17, so that would
So,
be
yeah.
midway through season 2
Yeah.
of Dragonflight.
The ping system, I think we've talked about this in the past, was a pivotal change for Mythic Plus 2.
It's so huge. It's so huge. And like nothing reminds me of how huge it is, like playing Fellowship and like desperately wanting to ping and not being able to. I think that game needs to add pings as quickly as possible. Cause yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome when you're playing with pugs, and it's just as awesome when you're playing with your friends, where you can just be like, you're in voice with them and you can be like, oh, we got one coming, where? And you can just bing there. Yeah, it's huge.
The one thing we haven't talked about yet, Scott, for season 3 is the borrowed power system. And that would be the like Rishi wrap that we got this season. The intent of this and the lore behind it and thematics, I think, are all novel. That being said, this kind of just felt like pretty much a nothing burger to me. It's a cape you go get, you put it on and forget about it.
It's just one slot you don't have to think about, and that's essentially it. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I noticed when it procced and put a shield on people, but noticing it aesthetically is not really like feeling like, yes, I am much more powerful because of this. It just didn't operate that way. It's boring. It's easy. It's of the 3 systems in the expansion, it's the easiest to level up, right? Because which
is a good thing. Like if we're gonna keep doing these half-assed barred power systems, I'd rather them be like the Rishi wrap than the other 2.
Sure, if they're gonna make a shitty system, I want it to be as easy to interact with as possible. I agree, but I would prefer them not make a shitty system.
Agreed. I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever. Like I like that it was at least tied to the lore of the story. Of the season, but yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing to say except cool, I guess. Try again later.
They did try to do a couple of new things in season 3 as well. Like we had a new transportation system came in with the like portals around when you could phase dive. I don't know how many people actually used those. I had to explain to a lot of people that there was a very fast way to get to the raid from the city that you could directly teleport to. So yeah, I'm not sure how many people even going into the end of the expansion really realize that, but I don't know. Again, a lot was done right here. I would like to continue to see the changes that they want to make. And I do also want to say, like, when we're going through and we're looking at the dungeons here, Scott, we kind of talked about like kind of best, kind of worst for the previous 2 expansion or seasons. What was ultimately your favorite dungeon this season?
Like in the season or the expansion?
Yeah, and this season specifically. We'll talk about expansion overview after.
I mean, probably just because it's new, it was Echo Dome. Yeah, I think I have to say that.
I want to say Echo Dome brought with it like something I didn't think was achievable, and that is an extremely short dungeon that also gives you the flexibility to really pull how you want to pull. There were multiple paths at which you could go through this place, and the amount of count that you needed was high. Like, let's be honest, you needed to pull a lot of the mobs in this dungeon, but there were a lot of mobs to pull, and they weren't so on top of each other that they were annoying. So it was interesting. And yeah, meta determines a route at which is the most feasible, and people just end up doing that every time. But I didn't think that it was going to be possible for them to create such a small and such a fast dungeon while also giving you kind of the flexibility to pull however you wanted. Normally, those small, fast dungeons are very much so on rails. I mean, think of things like Mists. You have like a total of one whole choice you can make the entire dungeon. Everything else is hold W and run forward.
Yeah.
So that was good. As far as like my favorite from the season, I don't know, because I have like a lot of the Tazavesh dungeons are really carried by my experience from them before, but I love those dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
And so I very fondly enjoyed my time in season 3 with the Tazavesh dungeons. It also helped, like, Solia's Gambit was a fairly forgiving timer. Streets was extremely tight, especially on release. It was a very, very tight timer. So much so that they added like minutes to the timer, not seconds.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, I would say probably my favorite dungeon of this season was probably Solia's Gambit.
Yeah.
I I still have a problem with the fact that the Solia fight is as long as it is.
That's so
I think
long.
that is not a good choice for a Mythic Plus dungeon to have a boss fight be that long. Because Mythic Plus, you hit a point at which you need to be locked in, like 100% engaged, very quickly in comparison to Raid. And to have a boss fight be that long, like a third of the dungeon in one fight it's rough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the way I've decided to allow myself to look at it is that the first phase of that fight is essentially just a trash pull because she basically does nothing. And the boss fight doesn't actually even truly begin until she goes into her second form. Because until then it's kind of nothing. But no, I agree with you for sure.
Worst dungeon for this season for me though, probably was Arakara, and I carry a lot of my disdain from that in season 1 over into season 3. Was the dungeon easy in season 1? Yeah, it was. Was it easy in season 3? Kind of. But man, I just like, I don't know if it's because I did this place so much trying to get a sack brood. I don't know what it was about Arakara, but like, I was so over this fucking dungeon by the end of the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go back. I don't want this one to return like anytime soon.
Yeah. Did not like it. I thought it was boring. The changes to it were not fun and stupid. And yeah, I was not a fan of it being back for sure.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about overall dungeon experience. And then we've got a couple of other things that we want to touch on before we wrap up. And we're kind of quickly running out of time. So overall, number 1 dungeon of the War Within, go.
Floodgate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best. There's
Any
every
reason
kind
why?
of there's every kind of healer profile. Like every boss requires a kind of a different kind of healing, which is a way it's always fresh and fun and exciting. I think all the boss fights are well designed. I like the layout of the dungeon, the choices that you get to make, the different routes. I'm gonna pick the season 3 version of it, so we don't have to deal with that fucking fish.
I was going to ask pre-bubbles or post-bubbles.
Yeah, it's got to be post bubbles. Although I do look forward to the inevitable return of Bubbles Jr. But no, I think it's just a really fun dungeon overall. I like the goblin aesthetic. I think it looks nice. I think the bosses are cool. I have no complaints about that dungeon whatsoever.
If we took difficulty away, like we kind of erased the fact that it is an absolute shit show in difficulty every single pull, how close does Priory come? Because I know you think pretty fondly of Priory too. How close does that come to Floodgate for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that place is aesthetically beautiful, and I really like the Arathi aesthetic. I like the look of that place a lot. I think the boss fights are fun. So yeah, probably a lot higher. I think it's just some really dumb stuff in that dungeon keeps it from being there for me. I think the paladin pulls before the second boss. Like there's parts of that I love as a healer, and then the parts of it I hate. I think this is it's a thing when I think this is a result of me not fully getting to run with a full group throughout both of the seasons where this dungeon was active, because with the tank that understands the damage profile of those paladins and like what the healer can and can't do, like I think that would be good shit and fun. But like the frustration was running with tanks who would pull them into such a manner and like not understand that like I just blew all my cooldowns on that last one. I have no mana. You cannot do this again in a pool that has more casters, so more random spot damage is going to go off, and some of those casts are going to go off right before the paladins do their thing. And therefore people are just going to die and I feel completely powerless. And so, yeah, I think that's negatively affecting my opinion of it, but I think it's a very pretty dungeon and I like the Arathi stuff. So
Sure. I think my favorite dungeon of the expansion, I mean, it would be Floodgate as well, but to pick something different from you, I do think very, very fondly of Priory. And the reason for that is it's a very difficult dungeon that I was never pissed off to go into.
mm-hmm.
Like, there might be a lot of people or a decent amount of people listening saying, man, Priory fucking sucked. I didn't like going into there. It was so hard to time a key. We always ass pulled shit. And like, all of those are valid. They really are. And I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. But man, I actually really liked this place. I thought the boss fights were very interesting from a DPS perspective. And it made for a very fun time. To the point where like trash was engaging, but not in like a fucking terrible way.
Sure.
So yeah, I enjoyed this place. And then on top of that, like it's short, it's sweet, it's fast. And I think that those dungeons ultimately are almost always better than the ones that are long drawn out 40-minute plus dungeons. Because it's quick to get in there, quick to get them done, and then you're back out and you're doing something else.
Yeah.
When it feels like you're in a dungeon for an hour, then it gets stale really fast.
Yeah. And sometimes the challenge of dungeons can be good. Like my fondest memory in Priory actually is I was season 2, I was doing my challenge and I was kind of rolling. Like I had finished on Druid very easily. I had finished on Monk very easily. I had finished on Disc Priest very easily. And I was on Holy Paladin. And I think the only dungeon I had left to get 3K on my Holy Paladin was Priory on a 13 or a 14 or whatever. And I was struggling with it. I was struggling with the healing. In like that big first pull, I was struggling to keep up in some of the paladin pulls. And like, I had to like take a step back and be like, what am I doing? I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? And I like looked and diagnosed how I was healing and what I was healing and when I was choosing to use cooldowns and when I wasn't. And I was like able to diagnose how I was not approaching these pulls correctly. And I solved the problem and then I achieved my goal. And it's like that shit feels good. That's part of the reason we like Mythic Plus. Just the idea that as you level up, new problems present themselves that you didn't have to deal with before. And suddenly you have to now. You can't brute force this anymore. You have to play smarter and wiser. And I don't know. I just enjoy that loop. And because it was in Priory, I have very fond memories of happening there.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I've got to ask you, and I know we're running out of time. I got to ask you, what was your worst dungeon of the season?
My worst dungeon of the entire season.
Or, sorry, expansion.
Expansion. That's tough, man.
Mine's one of two, and they're both in season 1. I'll tell you that much.
I think it has to be Necrotic Wake. I think I had a miserable time tanking that. I didn't quite enjoy healing it either. Yeah, I think it has to be Necrotic Wake.
Yeah, mine's tied for Arakara and Necrotic Wake. Arakara, again, like I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to be like, you liked Priory and you hated Arakara. What the fuck is wrong with you? And to that I say, you're correct. But I did not like Arakara. I didn't like it at all. So yeah, hated that. And then yeah, Necrotic Wake had a bunch of problems that never got solved. The fact that you had to pull like damn near the entire fucking dungeon, that was an issue. That was never fixed. The second boss in there, all of the bosses in there were extremely difficult. The first boss, I mean, less so than the rest of them, but like the second boss, you fuck up one thing and everybody's dead.
I fucking hate that
the
boss.
third boss was, and still to this day, I think is one of the most annoying boss fights in the entire world. Because it's like you miss one thing and you're immediately overwhelmed. And then it's back to square one and you have to do this long boss fight over again. So that fucking sucks. And then the final boss, you're constantly fighting one player down. And yeah, they get a damage buff when they come back. And there's kind of like a counterbalance to that. But you're always fighting one person down.
Yeah.
Always. And that is frustrating too, because you go into this dungeon with a full 5 stack of like utility that you have to your advantage. And at any given point, something that you might be relying on is gone. And that is annoying.
I will say I like aesthetically the idea of one person having to go off and do something on their own for a short period of time. Like, I think that's like a fun way of mixing up gameplay. I've always liked in raids where for certain fights or certain portions of certain fights that you have to like divide into 5 mans and go do things different and then come back together. I've always liked that idea. And this is kind of like a miniaturized version of it. But I think in this fight, the way the pace of the fight and the way it plays out, it becomes more annoying than it is fun. You know, the boss gets a huge shield that they put on themselves that you have to break as quickly as possible. And just the kind of the rotation of the fight makes it unfun. So I agree with you. Yeah.
The other part of it is like the area denial that comes afterwards is also annoying.
Yeah.
I don't know. Doing this dungeon, by the way, with a paladin who knows how to like pre-freedom things makes this boss fight at the end so much easier and so much simpler. But again, like if your paladin's gone and you're relying on that, and then it doesn't happen, you're like, oh, fuck. So, yeah, that becomes an issue.
One of my favorite Shadowlands stories is me returning to the game for the first time in years and years and years. And this is one of the first dungeons I ran. And I was just dispelling on cooldown the ice, the freeze, because I didn't know any better, because something popped up on my frames and said, you need to dispel this thing. And I would do it. And I just remember I had no idea what was going on. People just yelling at me, don't dispel, stop it. I didn't know.
Yeah. So anyway, Scott, there's a couple of other things that we want to talk about. So I'm not going to harp on this anymore, but all in all,
well,
thumbs up, thumbs down of War Within.
Yeah.
Mythic Plus.
I want to ask you, and I know we said we're not going to harp on this, but like, I think it's a good question to ask. Like, what is like the one thing going into Midnight that you think Mythic Plus needs at this point?
I think that Mythic Plus still needs an overhaul, but that's not one thing. Like we are more or less essentially still playing the same system that was introduced in Legion. And I think that needs to be revisited. Like they have slowly started to look at affixes. They have slowly started to look at keystone acquisition, i.e. resilient keys. But like fundamentally ground level, I think that we need to look at this and say, is this in line with modern standards? And I think that shockingly, the answer would probably be no. Not to say that it's a bad system and it needs to be ripped out. I just think that there are fundamental changes that could be made. But if we're talking about just like one specific thing going into Midnight, it's something that they've already kind of done. And that is lessening the burden on kicks and stops. It is something I have talked to the end of the world about in the War Within, being annoying. And if we're trying to move the gameplay and difficulty into the mobs and the bosses that we're doing, I fear that might come in the form of just increasing the amount of things that you need to kick and stop. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case in season 1, at least. But since we have done this like simplification of classes and moving the difficulty into the dungeons and what we're doing there, I think it might end up being inevitable. So I would like to see them continue this philosophy on their kicks and stops.
Sure. I think that's good. Yeah. Mine is just bring back affixes.
Okay. So if we bring back affixes, do you want them to bring back affixes that had already existed before, or do you want like all new affixes?
I mean, it
Ground up,
depends.
build new affixes.
What I want is I want dynamically changing gameplay that changes week to week and gives you like I think it's fun ultimately, and I think it took taking it away to realize it that you gotta like roll up to the game and be like, all right, new week. I'm gonna open my vault, and then I gotta figure out what the affixes are this week, and figure out how that's gonna change our approach to what dungeons we do and how we do them, and that's what I think is fun. And I don't think that needs bursting or explosive or grievous specifically, but I just think the idea of affixes that dynamically change gameplay that rotate on a periodic basis are good. Ultimately, that's the decision I've come to, the truth I've come to myself, and believe me, I was one of the strongest advocates for getting these things the fuck out of there. So like, this is not something that I've always believed. And I'm not saying like, again, I'm not saying we should just throw the old system back in here and call it good. But I think the game could use some week to week dynamism a little bit.
So do you think it's fine to have weeks where people just don't want to play still?
Well, I mean, I think that's the result of bad design and not necessarily a problem with affixes at large.
Sure.
Like,
that's fair.
In an ideal world, yes,
there's
like,
no affix that makes you not want to play the game.
Yeah, like that they feel challenging in a fun way and rewarding in a fun way, and don't like. Yes, there's always going to be some level of one is easier than another, because that's just true of anything. Like, and you put a list of things together, there's going to be one that's the easiest and one that's the hardest. Always, 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 no matter what you do. But yeah, I would like it balanced to a place where that doesn't happen. Now that's hard, right? And so I guess the question is like, do I think the benefits of this system outweigh the potential costs, which is maybe 1 week in 10, the game just really sucks to play. I don't know if I've given it enough thought to conclude on that yet. Sure. But maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. And I'll be interested. Maybe they'll listen. I do think that seasonal affixes do have still a place in the game, even if they don't do weekly affixes.
Yeah. No,
something
I agree with that too. Yeah. So. Yeah. I still fundamentally disagree with their decision to remove those from the game. Is like, we were doing that because the dungeons were staying the same. That's why we had seasonal affixes, because the dungeons were staying the same. So we needed to shake it up in some way. I was like, yeah, I get that. But I think they also add lore and flavor to the season that makes it feel like it's not just we're playing these 8 dungeons. We're playing these 8 dungeons and there's some overarching theme to them. So yeah, I agree.
And a goblin seasonal affix would have went hard.
I know, that would have been cool.
Imagine you just like spawn your like little drive car and you get to drive around in the dungeon or some stupid shit like that.
Yeah, something fun. I don't know. I think yeah.
But all right, well, there's a couple of other things that we wanted to cover, Scott. First and foremost, do you want to touch on some midnight stuff, or do you want to touch on some of our fellowship experiences thus far?
Let's do fellowship really quick, because I don't think this is going to be that long.
Sure.
So yeah, just for those of you that don't know, Fellowship Season 2 came out on the 19th last week. I still am uncertain on their decision to release it this close to the World of Warcraft expansion, but they did it. And we played quite a bit of it this weekend. I had a good time. The new healer is absolutely broken. Absolutely, like to a point where like I don't even think it's tuning. I think it's like the fundamental design of the healer is broken, because the healer grants your entire party a 50% DR. 50% of the damage that they do is converted into stagger. So basically you take Monk's stagger mechanic and you give it to everyone in your party. And then you also have Discipline Priest's Atonement healing, where the damage you do is converted into healing, except Atonement is not a buff that you need to keep active. It is just always on. Any damage you do, so you prevent 50% of damage, and then you can stagger. You can clear that staggered damage by just doing damage, and it's just completely broken. It's just complete. It's incredible. It feels so good to play. You feel invincible. But it is broken, and I don't know how they're going to address this long term.
Yeah, I can say the new tank is also very strong. Like, it is kind of in the middle of the two tanks that they already had, with the warrior tank that they had being, very straightforward and relatively easy, and the monk tank being a little bit more complex and understanding combos. This one kind of fits in the middle almost perfectly, but is extremely strong. I mean, you have an aura that you can put down which slows mobs' attack speed. You have an ability that becomes an instant cast. If you cast it on a mob, then it heals you as well as dealing damage to them. You have a bunch of parry mechanics, and then you can take talents that, like, anytime you parry, you counterattack. And so, like, I was looking at one of my breakdowns in one of the dungeons that we did. And by the way, this guy does like crazy AoE damage. Like, if you're pulling big and you have, like, it was a match made in heaven with this character and the new healer, because the tank is almost 100% self-sufficient. And so that allows the healer to really just focus on making sure that the group stays alive. But yeah, if you pull a lot of things, I was looking at my breakdown for one of the dungeons, and like 30 to 40% of my damage is passive shit that I like turn on, and it's just an aura that happens, or is that counterattack. Like, it's a very strong tank. I don't think it's fundamentally busted in the way the healer is. But it is a very good design. And I want to say, and Scott, I don't know if you'll agree or not, I think this healer design is extremely interesting, and I don't want them to shy away from that, but maybe the amount staggered, or maybe it's a buff you have to maintain, or something like something like that needs to change. But like the idea of it, when I first saw this, I was like, that is extremely cool. Extremely cool.
It's a lot of fun to play with. And I actually just looked while you were talking, and they did release a hotfix today that nerfs her pretty significantly. So they changed it to where instead of your damage healing everyone in your group, it only heals one person. So you cast a damaging spell, it heals one person. It's a smart heal. It chooses the person with the lowest amount of health. So that's a pretty significant change to how she operates. And it seems like what it's going to do is it's going to put the onus on your stagger clearing abilities, which, like, you still ended up using, but like you're just healing to damage conversion was so powerful, you didn't have to rely on the stagger clearing quite as much. And so now you'll have to do that a little bit more. So I think that might be a way of changing it that fixes the overpoweredness of it. But I gotta say, Tevin, I'm a little concerned about this game. And that's kind of what I really wanted to talk about, because I think that's ultimately what I think World of Warcraft players should care about is the details of the game. If you're not interested in the game, I understand why you wouldn't care. But like, if you are a Mythic Plus enjoyer, like we are, and presuming if you're listening to this, probably are, because that's the thing we talk about the most, then you want this game to do well, because it's just good for it's good for the ecosystem of World of Warcraft Mythic Plus if there's another good game doing similar things out there. And I'm a little concerned about it. I don't know if this model is sustainable for them into the future. And it's really taken, like, so what they did in season 2, one of the changes they made is there's basically 4 levels of advancement in this game. There's Contender, you do a bunch of dungeons until you do a capstone dungeon that unlocks Adept, you do a bunch of dungeons to do a capstone that unlocks Champion, then to Paragon, and then once you do the Paragon capstone dungeon, you unlock the Eternal mode, which is the closest paradigm to what Mythic Plus is. It's an eternally scaling timed dungeon system. In the first season of Fellowship, once you got midway through the Contender, dungeons started being timed, and the time limit mattered. The big change they made in season 2 was that the time limit portion of Mythic Plus doesn't really unlock till Paragon, the last league before you go into Eternal. And so basically all the dungeons we did over the weekend when we played were non-timed dungeon experiences. And so like the only struggle there is, can you kill the bosses? Even if you fuck up multiple times and have to go back and do them, you kill the bosses, you get the score for it, you get the point, you get the gear for it, and you get the advancement for it to move on to the next one. And I think they've over-adjusted a little bit. And I don't think I think it took what was already probably going to be a pretty quick season. I think the people that grind it, like basically the people that grind this stuff, did it in 2 days, right?
Yep.
Which I'm not saying they have to balance around the people that grind it. Who cares? But I think that the relative speed at which someone could get through the majority of the system is very, very quick, especially when there is essentially no failure mode until you get to the final league and into Eternal. And I think that's too much. And like, I understand why they did it, because there was a lot of bottlenecks that happened in the game where people got stuck, and they're trying to alleviate these bottlenecks by making it easier to progress and yada, yada, yada. I think they went too far in the other direction. And I just sit here and wonder, and I was like, can they ever do this in a way that feels satisfying, but retains players enough, but makes them get enough money? Because I still am not convinced that this business model works long term, that they can make enough money from selling the game and what is essentially a cash store for skins and mounts to keep the game afloat long term. I'm not, like, especially if seasons are for a lot of the players and importantly the players that make the content and get eyes on the game, like the content creators. If that lasts a weekend or maybe a week, 2 weeks, and that's it, and then those people move on to other stuff, can this game survive on an influx of players every 2 weeks, or for 2 weeks every 6 months? I don't think it can.
Yeah, it is concerning. The one thing too that I think is worth noting is, like, they are going to have to be more. So it's weird. In WoW, right, you have your character that you play and you go through. It's an RPG. You carry this character through in a story, and you have all these adventures with it. And so, like, WoW has slowly added classes over time. WoW has slowly added specs over time. Fellowship is less so in the realm of an RPG and can't really get away with the same rate of releasing new content, new heroes, new dungeons, and stuff like that. So they have to be at an accelerated rate, a rate almost akin to what I would say closer probably to League of Legends is. And that is also concerning to me, because if you're doing that over the course of a year or two, you're going to have so much inflation and so much bloat in every single role and every single character that you're going to find it very hard to balance very quickly. And so I do think that there's a lot of guns that Fellowship is staring the barrel, like down the barrel of right now. And I hope that they can pull it through. I really do. But I share your sentiment that I am worried about this game.
Yeah. And nothing would make me happier than for it to be a huge smashing success, because that brings ideas to the space. It brings competition to the space. It is good. It is good if you like Mythic Plus for this game to be good. I just don't know if there's enough players, enough people, and enough money to make it be what it needs to be.
Yeah, it's completely fair. Well, all right. Anything else on Fellowship?
No. It was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it, but yeah, some worry.
I'm still kind of enjoying it. Like, we might just hop on and do some dungeons if we have people around the next couple of days. I mean, obviously early access happens, and once that happens, I don't see myself booting up Fellowship again. But
they nerfed my guy, so I don't want to play her anymore. No, just kidding.
All right, we got to talk a little bit about Midnight Launch, because I think that there's a lot to discuss here. Because when we say Midnight is releasing and we will be able to play it at the end of this week, that's true, but kind of disingenuous. So you will be able to experience midnight. You will be able to go through the story and level. And if you played at the launch of The War Within, nothing in here is going to really be new for you.
Mhm.
It's more or less the same thing with a couple of new things added, i.e. the hunt system, and the fact that raids are going to be released in a kind of a slower fashion because there's multiple of them instead of just there being one singular raid. And so, yeah, there are some things that are changing, but if you played at the beginning of The War Within, you'll feel kind of at home at what's happening here. I guess, Scott, any specifics that you want to call out, or do you just want to touch on like dates things are releasing and stuff like that?
No, I mean, I think that the overarching message I can tell people is like, don't worry about it. You know, like I think we kind of always go through like a memory loss thing where we think we have to hit the ground running and do all this stuff as fast as possible, and then a half a week into it, we're like, oh, I'm out of stuff to do. And then we're getting on a podcast complaining about how there's nothing to do for 2 weeks. But that is essentially going to be exactly what happens again, right? This game comes out. We got early access on Thursday. The game launches on Monday. And then essentially for 2 weeks, there's going to be nothing that you can do long term to really boost your player power in any kind of noticeable way, right? Like technically, you're going to be able to do Mythic Zeros the first 2 weeks. The Mythic Zeros are going to drop gear that is a lower tier than the gear that will be available from M Zeros the first week of the actual season. But you could do it and you could get some gear, and I'll probably do it. You could grind some renown tracks. You could do some delves. You could do all these things, but like until the 17th of March, when the season actually kicks off, there's just not going to be that much you have to do. And so if you want to take your time and you want to explore the zones and you want to really read the quest text and enjoy the story, they have built this system and the timing of these things to allow you to do that and not feel the FOMO of all my friends are getting super strong and I'm not. Because I promise you, your friends can't get that much stronger than you. They just can't. So yeah, I mean, the game comes out on the 2nd. Season 1 officially launches on March 17th. That will have your Bountiful Delves, your Mythic Zeros, your Heroics, and your normal and Heroic Raid. Mythic Plus will not launch until the following week on the 24th of March. That it'll be both Mythic Plus and the Mythic Raid. And that's like the first time in this expansion really where you're going to have to be like, oh, I have an infinite grind now. And if I really want to gear up as quickly as I can, it makes sense to like play a shit ton and do nothing but M plus dungeons until my eyes bleed. But that's 3 weeks from now. More. That's 4 weeks from today as we sit here and record. So yeah.
It is going to be, if anybody's interested in the Race to World First, this is going to be an interesting one. So I would definitely stay tuned because the way that the raids are split up and everything else, I will be completely frank with you. I think there's going to be a lot of bitching and complaining from the Race to World First people.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to watch, and I hope that it makes for good content.
Yeah. To remind people what's happening is 2 raids are opening on the 17th, the normal and heroic versions of the Void Spire, and then I don't remember what the name of the one single boss raid is, but it's a single boss raid in Harinar. Those are opening on the 17th. Then on the 24th, the mythic version of those 2 raids opens, and then a week after that on the 31st, or is it the 1st? Does March have 31 days? It does. On the 31st of March, that is when the 2 boss raid, Defense Battle for the Sunwell or whatever it's called, that will open up on all 3 difficulties at the exact same time. So yeah, I think what Tevin's talking about here makes a lot of sense, right? It's like how far into the mythic bosses from those first 2 raids will we be in the race when that next raid opens up? Like, right? It could be if those bosses are easy enough, they could have cleared those 2 raids before the next one opens up and have nothing to do. Or those 2 raids could open up and we're not done with Voidspire yet. And so are we just going to jump to those two? No, probably not. They'll probably go do splits there, though. They'll probably kill him on Heroic because they're going to drop stuff that they might need. And who knows? I mean, I think everyone's going to be on some level experiencing something similar, not quite as similar to the Race to World First, but I'm already thinking about our group and like what we're going to do, right? Because we're presumably going to clear the raid on normal the first week, get into Heroic. We're probably not going to have those first 7 bosses cleared on Heroic before the next one opens up. But like, people are going to want to go do those bosses, especially on normal. It's going to have the curio, I think, included in it. So all of our raid won't have tier yet. So maybe we're going to have to we're going to pause Heroic Prog to run to this other raid and clear it on normal first. And then like, it's a little confusing. It is. And I'm interested to see how it actually plays out when it's all live and everyone's in there doing it.
Yeah, 100%. So definitely stay tuned. I'm sure we'll be talking about it. And if you care about the race, I'm sure they'll be talking and or complaining about it, as content creators are very good at doing.
Yes. I think the most important thing to say for people that are listening to this right now, because they'll be listening to it either during or before early access weekend, is all there is to do this weekend is level your guys.
Yeah, Scott's over here like smell the roses, listen to the quest, read the quest text. On the other hand, I can be the little devil on your shoulder, and you can do what I'm going to do and level like 19 different characters instead. So
look, I'm going to level every single one of my healers. I'm a do as I say, not as I do person. Obviously, last week I talked about how I hate stopping and kicking when I'm a DPS player. So I'm not saying that what I do is the correct thing to do. I'm just saying the game has afforded you the opportunity to actually like enjoy this experience, and you don't have to push through it as quickly as possible. I'm going to do it.
All right, Scott. Well, we went a little long on this one, so we should probably wrap it up here.
Sure.
And when we catch you guys next week, we will be we'll be talking about our experiences leveling and the zones and kind of just the overall feel of early access in the new expansion for World of Warcraft, Midnight, because that's coming out in early access the end of this week.
It's here. I can't believe it. Let's go.
All right. The question that I have for you guys is what are you doing for early access? Are you going to be on the Angel side and what Scott was saying? You're going to slowly go through the quests and progress and read all the quest texts and do all the side quests and all of that stuff? Or are you going to be like a normal degenerate WoW player who grew up playing this game since they were like 5 and never read anything anyways and just blast through everything? Because as much as I'm memeing about it right now, there are a lot of people who play the game for the story and do enjoy the story. So
yeah,
I want to know what you guys are going to be doing, and let me know in the comments. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's it. So as always, guys, the War Within's over, but you can contact us over at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. YouTube is at yellingintothevoidwow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are both at Into the Void Wow.
And make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Is available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube. It's never been more important to yell into the void, because the void is attacking us right this very minute. In fact, look out. You're being attacked. Look behind you. Go. Yeah.
Lastly, though, guys, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on the YouTube video, the Spotify, the videos / recording. All of that helps us get more exposure, introduces us to new people, and allows us to continue what we're doing here. But hey, Scott, until we're in Midnight, when, like you said, the void is literally attacking us and at the doorstep of the Sunwell and going to destroy everything, we'll just be over here hanging out with Zalateth, just yelling into the void.
Yelling into her feet.
the feet void. Toe void.
Wiggle your big toe, Zalateth.
Is it a Kill Bill callback?
Yeah, it is.